It was not underwatering that scorched 80% of my pothos plants last summer. It was exactly 2 tablespoons of premium liquid fertilizer. I stood there in my living room on a humid July afternoon, staring at my once vibrant collection of Epipremnum aureum, realizing that my well-intentioned attempt to supercharge their growth had triggered a botanical catastrophe that left nearly every leaf brown, brittle, and curling at the edges within a single week. I thought I was giving them a massive boost. Instead, I basically poisoned them. But why those 2 spoons turned toxic is the trap. I had followed the generic instructions on the bottle, assuming that more nitrogen and phosphorus meant faster growth, but I ignored the specific microclimate of my apartment where temperatures were soaring. I didn't realize that I was essentially serving a concentrated chemical cocktail to a system that was already struggling to survive the intense heat. You see, everyone tells you to feed your indoor jungle heavily right as summer begins. It is the advice plastered all over gardening blogs and social media feeds, insisting that the increase in natural daylight hours necessitates a high-octane diet for every houseplant in your collection. Influencers show off lush, massive leaves and promise that if you just dump enough nutrients into the soil, your plants will double in size before the autumn equinox arrives. So you grab that sleek little bottle, mix it up, and pour it directly into the bone-dry potting soil. You don't think to check if the soil is already parched from the week's heat wave because you are focused entirely on the schedule. You watch the liquid disappear into the dark, thirsty peat moss, thinking you are providing a life-giving drink, never suspecting that the moisture you are providing is actually a delivery vehicle for a lethal dose of concentrated mineral salts. That is the exact moment the microscopic root hairs beneath the surface begin to fry. These tiny, delicate structures are the lifeline of the plant, responsible for drawing in water and essential nutrients through a process of diffusion. When you introduce a high salinity solution into a substrate that is already lacking water, you create an environment where the plant's internal cellular integrity is instantly compromised by the chemical shock occurring just centimeters below the surface. To understand why June is the absolute deadliest month for this mistake, look at what fertilizer actually is. It is not magic plant food. It is a complex formulation of ammonium nitrate, potassium phosphate, and other inorganic compounds. These minerals are stable in a laboratory setting, but when applied to a living organism in a domestic environment, they behave according to the rigid laws of chemistry, specifically the principles of osmotic pressure and concentration gradients that govern every living cell. It is essentially a highly concentrated cocktail of raw chemical salts. When you mix these salts into a volume of water, you are creating a solution with a much higher solute concentration than the sap inside the plant's own root cells. This is a fundamental violation of the balance required for healthy growth. And because the plant has no way to filter these salts once they enter the root zone, it is forced to react to the toxicity immediately. When indoor temperatures spike past 85 degrees, your plant is already losing moisture through its leaves at record speed. This is the process of transpiration, where water vapor escapes through tiny pores called stomata to regulate the internal temperature of the foliage. As the plant loses water, it tries to pull more from the soil, but in the heat of a summer afternoon, the soil is often depleted, leaving the plant in a state of extreme hydraulic tension. It desperately needs pure water to survive the heat wave. But if you dump a heavy dose of salts into that dry pot, you are creating a disaster. The soil becomes an environment where the concentration of minerals is drastically higher than the concentration inside the plant roots. This creates an osmotic imbalance so severe that the plant can no longer function as a biological entity, effectively turning your favorite monstera or pothos into a victim of its own environment. Osmosis slams into reverse. The salt literally sucks the remaining water right out of the plant's own roots. Instead of the roots absorbing moisture to hydrate the stems and leaves, the high salt concentration in the surrounding soil pulls the internal water out of the plant's cells and into the soil. This process, known as exosmosis, leads to immediate cellular dehydration, causing the plant to wither and collapse even though the soil might technically appear moist to the naked eye. Botanists call this fire fertilizer burn, and the visible destruction happens incredibly fast. It is a rapid chain reaction where the loss of turgor pressure causes the leaves to droop, followed quickly by the death of the leaf margins as the salts accumulate in the extremities. The plant is essentially being desiccated from the inside out, and by the time you notice the change in color, the damage to the root system is already widespread and potentially irreversible. Within just 48 hours, you will see the chemical damage creeping up the stems. It starts as a faint discoloration at the very tips of the leaves, a subtle change that is easy to miss if you aren't inspecting your plants daily. However, as the salts migrate through the vascular system, the damage accelerates, turning once vibrant green tissue into dead, necrotic material that looks as if it has been held over an open flame. The tips of your once perfect leaves turn a crispy, burnt brown, often surrounded by a sickly yellow halo. This halo is the hallmark of chlorosis, indicating that the plant is no longer able to produce chlorophyll in those areas because the chemical salts have disrupted the nutrient uptake pathways. The leaf tissue becomes papery and fragile, shattering at the slightest touch, serving as a grim reminder of the high-concentration chemical burn that is currently ravaging the internal structures of the plant. Most people see those brown edges, panic, and assume the plant is dying of thirst. So they add even more thirst versus burn fertilized water. It is a tragic misunderstanding of the symptoms, as the gardener tries to fix the problem by pouring more of the exact substance that caused the issue in the first place. This creates a feedback loop of destruction that can kill a healthy, established plant in less than a week if left unchecked. That is the fatal blow. You are essentially salting the earth in your own living room. By adding more fertilizer, you are increasing the osmotic pressure even further, ensuring that the plant has absolutely no chance of recovering its water balance. The concentration of salts in the soil reaches a point where the plant's roots are essentially pickled, permanently damaging the fine root hairs that are necessary for any future nutrient uptake or growth. But do not throw that expensive monstera in the trash bin just yet. Even if it looks like a lost cause with drooping stems and brown, crispy leaves, the crown of the plant might still be holding on to a spark of life. As long as the base of the stem remains firm and the roots haven't turned into a mushy, black, rotting mass, there is a very high probability that you can intervene and save the specimen. If you catch the crispy edges early, you can completely reverse the nutrient lockout. The key is to act before the necrosis reaches the main stem or the growing nodes. If you see the early warning signs of yellowing or brown tips, stop all feeding immediately and begin the process of soil remediation. By removing the excess salts, you can allow the plant to recover and begin the slow, steady process of producing new, healthy growth once again. Pick up the dying plant and carry it straight to your bathroom shower or garden hose. You need a space where you can let a large volume of water run through the pot without worrying about the mess. This is not the time for a light misting or a quick watering. You are performing an emergency medical procedure on your plant, and you need to be prepared to use a significant amount of water to flush out the toxins. You need to flush the soil. Run lukewarm water continuously through the pot for exactly 5 minutes. Use a gentle stream, not a high-pressure jet, to avoid physically damaging the roots that are already under stress. The goal is to saturate the soil completely and allow the water to carry the dissolved mineral salts out through the drainage holes at the bottom of the pot, effectively resetting the soil chemistry to a neutral, safer state. This physically washes the excess toxic salts out through the drainage holes, instantly relieving the deadly osmotic pressure on the roots. As the water passes through the substrate, it drags the accumulated minerals with it, diluting the concentration until it reaches a level that the roots can tolerate. You will likely see the water running out the bottom looking slightly murky at first, but keep going until the runoff is perfectly clear, signaling that the salt levels have dropped significantly. Let it drain completely in the sink. Your plant will look exhausted, but the fire extinguisher chemical fire is finally out. It might take a few days for the leaves to regain their turgor pressure and stand tall again, and some of the heavily damaged leaves may never fully recover their green color. That is okay. You have saved the life of the plant, and in time, it will push out new healthy leaves to replace the ones that were sacrificed. Now, how do you actually feed them during the massive June growth spurt without repeating this exact question nightmare? It requires a complete rethink of your fertilization strategy, moving away from aggressive, high-concentration feeding and toward a more conservative, plant-centric approach. By understanding the underlying chemistry, you can provide the essential nutrients your plants crave without ever risking the health of their delicate root systems or causing the rapid, devastating burn that nearly ruined your collection. Rule number 1. Never ever fertilize a thirsty plant with dry soil. This is the most common mistake made by indoor gardeners, and it is the single greatest cause of fertilizer burn. When the soil is dry, the plant is in a state of water conservation, and introducing concentrated minerals at this time is like asking a dehydrated person to drink seawater. It is counterproductive, dangerous, and entirely avoidable if you simply follow the correct sequence of care. Always soak the soil thoroughly with plain water first. Let the roots plump up and fully hydrate. When the plant is well hydrated, its cells are turgid and better able to handle the addition of minerals. This pre-watering step ensures that the fertilizer solution is diluted immediately upon contact with the soil, preventing the localized hotspots of high salt concentration that cause the roots to wither, turn brown, and eventually die off completely. Then, come back and apply your diluted liquid fertilizer the very next sun morning. By waiting until the next day, you ensure that the plant has had ample time to move the water through its vascular system, meaning it is in the best possible state to absorb the nutrients you are providing. This timing, while requiring a bit more patience, is the secret to getting that fast summer growth without the risks associated with rapid, poorly managed fertilization. Rule number 2. Completely ignore the dosage instructions printed on the back of the bottle. Manufacturers often suggest concentrations that are far too high for indoor potted plants, which have limited root space and no way to leach excess minerals into the ground. These recommendations are designed to make you use the product faster, not to provide the optimal amount of nutrition for your specific plant, so take control by using much less. Cut their recommended dose all the way down to 25%. A quarter strength is all they need. If the bottle says 1 tablespoon per gallon, use only a quarter of a tablespoon. This lower concentration is more than enough to support vigorous growth throughout the summer season, and it provides a massive safety margin that protects your plants from ever experiencing the devastating effects of salt accumulation, no matter how hot or dry the conditions become. Try this gentle, hydrated approach and watch your indoor jungle push out massive, flawless leaves all summer long. By shifting your focus from pushing the plants to their limit to supporting their natural rhythms, you will see a transformation in their health and vitality. Your plants will reward you with lush, deep green foliage and rapid, healthy growth, proving that when it comes to indoor gardening, less is often significantly more.